Thanks
It's working. We're on.
Hey, everyone.
Hey. All right.
Thanks for letting us know. As you may tell, we're pretty new at this.
We're novices at this Facebook Live thing.
But welcome to Facebook Live. From,
Well, we are
Grace
thrilled
Brigade.
to be here with you, captive audience. Or not so captive. You can get up and walk away at any moment if you want.
Yeah.
But we're here to talk about the Braves, so let's get right to it. We have a few questions that are coming in. Laugh out loud. What's your language? Watch your language, I think you meant to say.
Yeah.
Anyway, somebody asked, how's Acuna looking? Well, I think we've answered that in enough stories so far. He looks great. I mean, we'll find out more when the games start on Friday, but nobody is more exciting, and there's nobody that people are more excited to see than Acuna. I mean, when you have a Hall of Famer like Chipper Jones saying that he's the best prospect he's seen, and not trying to downplay the kid, that should tell you something, because normally your veteran players like your Chipper Jones will always try to downplay expectations so this kid doesn't come in overwhelmed, but they don't seem to be worried about that with him, and that says everything that I need to know. Steve, what have you thought about the buzz about him?
Yeah, I mean, Chipper right away said, you can tell when he's hitting without even looking, because there's a different sound.
Yeah.
I think that's a common thing with great players, and I think you'd agree too, Dave, that when the season begins, it would probably be wise for him not to be on the roster, to go ahead and give him the 3 weeks or whatever in the minors, just so they have the extra year.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand the fans that want to see him and think that you should have him on the opening day roster because of the excitement factor and to get people excited, to get people coming out. But when you look at it, take the emotion out of it and the excitement out of it, and just look at it as a business decision, which is what it is. It really does make more sense to have him, because it's only a matter of 3 weeks. If it was 2 months, I'd say, hey, screw that. He's got to be on the opening day roster. But it's 3 weeks, and it's basically the second homestand is when he could be activated, and at the back end of that, you get a whole full season if it comes to that. Now, I don't think it'll come to that, because I think he's the type of player like Freddie Freeman that the Braves are going to try to sign up for a long-term contract way before he gets to free agency, and maybe before he gets to arbitration. But having that extra year, say his first and second year are just phenomenal, and his agent is not interested in signing a long-term deal, or the asking price is just so exorbitant. Say he says he wants 8 years and $300 million. Then if someday, God forbid, you had to trade the guy, having that extra year of contractual control at the back end, as we saw with Christian Yelich, having that extra contractual control makes the guy that much more tradable and that much more value. So in any way you look at it, whether it's with the Braves and him having another year before he becomes a free agent, or you wanted to trade him or whatever, it just makes more sense, because, like I said, it's only 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks that before he could come down. And they might want him to get the 3 weeks at AAA before he comes down anyway, although I think he's going to show that he's ready.
I don't think the Braves will lose the pennant in the first couple weeks, so I think they're all right.
No, exactly.
I think
and
they're
that's
right.
the other thing, is people point to Jason Hayward being on the opening day roster in 2010. There was a lot of things going on then. There wasn't another clear option in right field. It was Bobby's last year. They thought they had a playoff team, which they did end up win a wild card. And they didn't. They thought Jason Hayward, it meant enough to have him on the opening day roster. With Acuna, there are other options for left field to begin the year to kind of hold that seat until he's ready. And they, as much as you don't want to say you raise a white flag, they're not looking to contend for the World Series this year, and it's all about the future. And with a new GM coming in, you just look at that, like I said, take the sentiment out of it and the emotion out of it, and it makes more sense to do it. Now, having said that, if he's on the opening day roster, I'm not going to I will say I understand. You want to capture this because everybody wants to see the kid.
I'm going to refuse to cover him for 3 weeks, and then so I have another year of covering him at the end.
Well, they will get ripped, panned by baseball people if he's on the opening day roster and they give up that year of contractual.
Well, I'm glad to see a lot of questions coming in. Obviously, there's a lot of interest in this team still. I think, and a lot of the questions seem to be surrounding the pitching staff, which is where I think a lot of the questions reside.
Nunez. Somebody asked a question about Nunez, another option. I know a lot of people have thought that the Braves might add a bat before opening day, and they still might. But from talking to Alex Anthopoulos, it's pretty clear that defense is a top absolute priority. They don't want to add a guy if he's not going to make them better defensively.
Right.
B, they weren't going to go out and get a guy who might end up being a non-tendered free agent a year from now, like a Matt Adams, because they're not going to pay a guy who's making $5.9 this year, like a guy that just became available, and then can make $9 million next year when they don't have a spot for him, so it becomes a non-tendered free agent. And meanwhile, you can't look at it as if Nick Markakis is not here, because he is, and you can't look at it as if you could just trade him, because we're seeing how much trouble the Rays are having trading a guy. Dickerson's making $5.9 and he has 25-30 homer power. Was an all-star last year. They haven't been able to trade him so far. Now maybe they will soon, but they haven't so far. Markakis is making $11 million and doesn't have that kind of power anymore. So they're not going to be able to trade him without eating most, if not all, of that salary, I wouldn't think. So he's here, and he's not here to make $11 million and sit on the bench. So it is what it is. They've got some money left. They don't have much left this year. Maybe $5, $6, $8 million, maybe, and they want to spend that wisely and kind of see what they've got this spring, where they have holes, and maybe they could throw that and fix a hole rather than just add a bat that they don't necessarily have to have.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about how Chipper came in saying it was a free for all out there, but actually I think there are a lot of places that are locked up, don't you? And then I don't know where do you see the actual areas of competition? Third base, obviously. Pitch. The rotation, but where are the biggest battles of the spring going to come?
Yeah, I think Chipper may have been overstating it a little bit, and I understand what he's talking about, because the message that Snitker had for the team was, don't come in assuming that it's a given that you've got this job or that job, because he wants guys going out and playing as if they have to win or to keep their jobs or to earn a job and to be hungry. But bottom line, it looks like the only real position battles are at third base, where I think Camargo's the odds-on favorite. Right. They have Ruiz playing some first base too to make him more versatile, make him a more attractive roster option, at least until they get a third baseman. But Camargo, I think, is going to get a chance to show what he can do, and they're really just trying to keep that position occupied this year to see Austin Riley, if he develops, if he's ready a year from now. The only other spots, really, if you look, realistically, are left field, and that's just until Acuna's ready.
Stopgap,
yeah. And then in the pitching staff, a couple of bullpen spots, and then obviously the last two spots in the starting rotation, which to me is three guys, the three rookies or guys in their first year. Newcomb's not a rookie anymore, but Newcomb, Fried, and Gohara. And I think Gohara, unless he just falls on his face this spring, has got one of those spots. So really, I think it probably comes down realistically to Fried and Newcomb battling for that fifth spot. Now that could change. Somebody could get hurt, obviously, but that's the way I see it. And then in the rotation, and then in the bullpen, there's a few spots, but you got a couple of guys who are Rule 5 picks that have to be carried, or you lose them, and then one out of options. So I mean, there are, if those guys perform the way they hope this spring, like a guy like Dan Winkler, Rule 5 guy, he's on the team as far as I'm concerned, unless he gets hurt this spring, or he. I don't think he has to prove anything. I think they saw enough last year where he's got it. And their Rule 5 pick from last year, from December, Gomez also is going to get a chance to. They don't want to have to just give him up for nothing. So if he looks good this spring, he'll have a spot. There's not a whole lot of spots there. Now, we were talking about Austin Riley, though. I think he's so important in everything, because the Braves need to get power somewhere, and they realistically have three prospects who could hit 25 to 35 homers a year for long careers if they develop the way they intend for them to. Now, Acuna, I don't think there's really much question about him. He's going to be a really good player and probably a great player. The other two are Alex Jackson, the catcher, and Austin Riley, the third baseman. Alex Jackson has to continue developing as a catcher, because he had played outfield for a few years in the Mariners minor league system. Moved back to catcher last year and played really well. They liked what they saw from him, but he still has to improvements and polish it up before he's ready to catch at this level. But the power, the bat plays, as they say, light tower power, as Chipper said of Alex. So if he comes along, he's the catcher of the future, at least for a few years. And then Austin Riley at third base is made real big strides at Double-A last year. So if he continues that at Triple-A this year, you could legitimately look at him in the lineup in 2019 at some point, if not opening day. And
how is he defensively?
a lot better than people had
Yeah.
thought. At one point, he was a little thick coming up, and they thought he might get bigger and have to move off third base. But he instead got a little leaner and more active and quicker. And like Chipper Jones, I was talking to Chipper about him, and Chipper thinks that he can be a good defensive third baseman on top of being a hell of a hitter. So I know everybody said this, or not everybody, but a lot of fans want him to go out and go get a third baseman this offseason, throw a lot of money at, Machado next offseason. And they might end up doing that, but only if Austin Riley doesn't develop. In the interim, they're not going for the World Series this year. Hey, if cards fall in their direction and they end up getting a wild card berth, that'd be awesome. But they're going into this year. It's still a developmental year, and Alex wants to evaluate the guys. He's a new GM. He wants to see all these guys before he starts trading guys and makes a move that he regrets for 10 years. So Austin Riley is a guy that they developed a power hitter finally. They've waited years since Freddie Freeman came up to develop a power hitter, one that will be affordable for a number of years, and that's Austin Riley. And if he comes along like they hope he will, then there you've solved. You've got a 25, 30 homer guy at third base potentially, and a guy that'll be real affordable for a while. So then you can use that money that you'll have next offseason, whether it's $40, $50 million, whatever they have available, and you can go fill other needs if you don't have to go get a third baseman. Now, if Austin stalls this year or they decide, hey, it's not the long-term answer, then they're prepared to go after a guy like Donaldson next offseason or Machado or whatever, but that's all to be determined this year, and so much of it depends on what Austin Riley does. It just makes sense to let the kid continue to try to develop it, because if he does, then you've got some money you can throw at other needs instead of trading a guy who could end up being just the guy you've wanted, a power guy.
Right. For those of us who may have joined in late, this is Facebook Live with AJC's Braves expert Dave O'Brien and a hanger-on here in Steve Hummer.
And Kevin McAlpin is in the wings here, making faces.
The question, there are really too many questions to field, and my hands
why not the World
Series?
Anyway. Why not the World Series this year? Well, there's
Dave?
some teams that are clearly a lot better than the Braves.
Yeah.
And as much as you obviously, if you ask the players, they'll say they're going to try to win the World Series this year, because they'll say the goal is to win the division, and if not, then to win the wild card, and that once you get in the playoffs, anything can happen. So I haven't had one player tell me, no, we're just developing this year. They say just the opposite, especially the guys coming from other teams, like the guys that came over from the Dodgers, Brandon McCarthy and Kazmir. They said, we're coming over here to win. I mean, they're not coming over here to develop. But realistically, this team is still in a rebuilding project. At the end of it, granted, they're a lot closer to the end than the beginning of it. But with a new GM, you got to come in and evaluate what you got before you start doing knee-jerk things and trading prospects who might end up being great players down the line, and you didn't really give them a chance to develop before you made moves. So this is a year that I think next year, and I don't think it's looking through rose-colored glasses to say that in 2019 this is a team that will contend for the division, that can, certainly, if things go the way, if the development continues with several guys. I think the Nationals take a step back next year. They got a ton of free agents, and I think the Braves will be in that position to really start this next kind of era that they hope will be another long winning era where they're perennial contenders again. But realistically, I don't think this is the year. Could they slip into the wild card if they get some breaks? Sure, absolutely. If a couple of those pitchers step up this year, and Acuna, competes for Rookie of the Year, and Dansby bounces back and looks more like he did at the end of 2016 than he did last year. Hey, and Ozzie Albies, a full season at second base, the defense should be a lot better than it was last year. Then, yeah, they could compete for a wild card, but they still, I think, are quite a bit behind the Nationals and even the Mets if the Mets are healthy. But we'll see. I mean, it's just not realistic to say they're going for the World Series this year.
Well, you're preaching realism. That's we don't trade in that very much here.
What else we got here?
A lot of Chipper questions about his future as a possible coach or manager, which in conversations with him that doesn't seem very likely. Obviously, in the very near future, he's very happy doing what he's doing, just parachuting in, dispensing his wisdom as he can, and then getting back home and doing his hunting show and enjoying his family. And frankly, I can't blame him.
Yeah, it's different than it was, and people got to keep in mind. And with Chipper, maybe if he wasn't newly married, relatively so, he's got a kid who's only a couple or 3 years old, 2 years old. McAlpin, 2 years old. Chipper's kid. No, newborn. He's got a newborn. So maybe if Chipper wasn't a new dad again, and so caught up in that and all the stuff that he missed with his other kids, it might be different. But this is a guy that's got it's a new part of his life, and he's loving it, and being at home with raising his kid. And like Steve said, the hunting show is a big thing for him, and it's really been successful right now, and he's excited about that. So, yeah, he likes to come in and spend a few days talking to the guys like here, and that's a whole different grind than being a hitting coach or a manager, in which case you're working more hours than you did as a hitter for about the hitting coach 1/15 to 1/20th the salary of what Chipper made as a player. It's not like it used to be. There's a whole lot of former players that are taking jobs as manager, but for the most part, there are exceptions, Don Mattingly and stuff, but for the most part, they were stars from the previous era when the contracts weren't as huge as they are now, or they were good but not great players, and they never had the $20 million a year contracts. And these guys have so much money, if they invested even semi-wisely, or if they just didn't blow it, they have so much money that it's hard to get them to think about giving up their lives that they're leading right now to get back into the grind. And it is a grind of traveling and coaching and managing.
And nobody rips them when they're not hitting.
Exactly. It's a year-round job.
So why put yourself through that?
And in Chipper's case, I've never talked to anybody that knows the game or knows hitting more than Chipper. Nobody. But he might be one of those guys that's like Jeff Francoeur had told me. He could be like a guy like Ted Williams, who was a great, great hitter himself. But when you you get a little frustrated when the guys, your pupils, can't pick up on it like you could, because he's kind of a hitting savant, Chipper is, and who knows if he could stick with it when guys weren't getting immediate results. But I do think he'd be a hell of a coach, and I think he'd be an even better manager. I really do.
Yeah. What are you expecting from Dansby this year? What kind of bounce back?
It's going to be interesting. It really is. I like the guy a lot. He's such a good guy, and so you pull for him. You pull for anybody that works hard and is a decent guy and all that, and he really is. I think he's more the player we saw at the end of 2016 than last year. I really do. And then when he came back from his demotion to AAA last year, it was only a couple of weeks, but he came back and he seemed more relaxed. And those first couple of weeks back, he really was hitting and playing like he did in 2016. So I'd be surprised. I'd be shocked if he was as bad as he was last year before he got sent down in July. I think he'll come in and be more the guy we see long term, which is, and we never thought he was going to be a superstar. If you go back and look at what most of us wrote when he came up, people act like we made him out to be the next, Mike Trout, and we didn't. Guys like Chipper Jones, you talk to him, they say this isn't a kid that's going to hit 30 home runs or hit 340 or do anything off the charts, but he did everything well, and he was going to be a solid middle of the diamond defender and a good hitter for a high average, good OBP, maybe 15 to 20 homers a year for a long time, and a guy who would be a good team leader, all that. So that's what they thought they were getting, and I think he could still be that. And I think maybe he'll come in this year and hit 280, 10, 15 homers, maybe a little more, and 350 OBP. And if he does that after the year he had last year, that would be really successful.
Yeah.
Now, am I going to be? Is it possible that he just isn't the player that we all thought he was going to be, and that the Braves have to go in another direction at shortstop in the future? Yeah, it certainly is possible. And I wouldn't have said that a year ago going into the spring. I would thought that it was a given that he was going to be a shortstop for the next 8-10 years. But it's not a given anymore. But I still am bullish on his future.
Yeah, it's a question about Snitker's future, as to how short the leash is on him, and I think by extension, is he the guy to take them into whatever the next phase is that that the Braves are going to enter?
I think it remains to be seen. The easy answer is no, he's not, and I think that's probably more likely that they have him manage this year, and then they decide. Then Alex makes his choice for manager, and they get just the type of guy they think can lead them into that next era. But who knows? I mean, maybe this year they really respond well to Snitker. The players love him.
I think they've responded to him quite well.
I do too.
To what they've needed at this stage.
Right, and what he's had to work with.
Right.
I mean, realistically, you can't evaluate the guy yet on what he's done. I think you can more evaluate it after this year. But I think they give him the chance to manage all year this year. It would take a really dramatic downturn for them not to. And then Alex decides late in the year or more likely during the offseason, is he the guy going forward, or do they go out and get a younger manager, maybe a more analytical leaning manager? But you know what? They've made some steps in that direction by going out, and I think they had made some really good hires with Walt Weiss as the bench coach. He's a guy who's really into the analytics, has picked it up. He's old school in that he was a player. He's tough. He's got that gravitas and that instant respect from the other players. But he's also picked up on the analytics and understands the importance of them and in-game decisions. I hated to see Terry Pendleton leave, and I think that was a bad decision getting rid of him. I think he should still be on the staff. I think he was miscast as a bench coach, but Snitker wanted him as his bench coach, so he's yes, I'll be glad to do it for you. Ultimately, it led to TB's demise because I don't think that was the proper role for him.
Right.
I think first base coach, I think he was great over there. Hitting coach before that, if you go back, the Braves were top 3 in the league in OBP for a couple of years before people really started respecting OBP for the way they do now. But anyway, Walt Weiss as bench coach, I think, is a good choice. He's more suited for that than Chipper, and I think Snit needs a guy who can help him make those in-game decisions based on all the analytics they have, matchups they have, rather than just going, gut like Snit is more inclined to do. So I think Weiss is a real good choice there, and EY same way.
He's been through that too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Eric Young worked with Weiss, played with him. Eric Young's another guy who's only about 50-52, so he can relate to all the players and everything. I think he was a good choice too. I hated seeing TP go, and I hated seeing Eddie Perez go too, but I do think these are good hires, and I think Walt Weiss will be really good in the bench coach position.
There were a couple
that could help Snit. It could help Snit's job security too if they the decisions that he will make help him avoid making that he could have had. That would have helped to have Walt there last year, maybe to say, no, we can't do that. We can't bring him in right now to relieve or to pinch hit.
There were a couple Freeman questions, Freddie, not Sam, about A, his health, and B, I thought by extension is, I don't know how this, protecting him in the lineup too, getting someone to hit behind him that's going to be effective as at least Kemp was on the short term.
Yeah.
But I think health-wise, he came in quite happy.
Yeah.
As long as he doesn't fall off his scooter, he'll be. I think he'll be ready to go.
He's 100% healthy as far as everything I've seen and what he has said. He's really fit. He's stronger in the upper body. He's noticeably stronger in the upper body. He did more forearm work, arm work this offseason than he's done in the past because he wanted to.
They call him Popeye.
But he's lean. I mean, he's in really good shape. So. You can't call Freddie Freeman injury prone yet because the injuries he's had for the most part have been like last year.
You get hit.
You get hit by a 95-mile-an-hour fastball. That's not being injury prone at all. So, and you look at his seasons before that one and the other year where he had the wrist and hand injuries. for the most part, he's a guy that's out there 155, 162 games a year, and he intends to play every game. The guy doesn't beg out of the lineup. In fact, he fights to be in the lineup if he just has a nagging injury. So, as far as that's concerned, playing hurt and playing injured, he is the epitome of what you want in that, in that he's a guy you have to get to be honest with you and tell you he's hurting. Because last year he played down the stretch with that wrist aching when the Braves were way out of it. And there's a lot of guys that would have at least taken a day off, every few days, if not just shut it down. And he wouldn't even think about it. Here he is, this long-term contract, nothing to be gained from it. It's not like he was playing for a new contract, but he just loves to play. So, in answer to the question, he's fully healthy. And as far as protection behind him, Kemp helped a lot early on, but it's weird because if you look at the breakdown, he also hit fine for the most part when Markakis was hitting behind him. So it's not like pitchers feared, Markakis taking him deep. Freddie doesn't need to have a whole lot of pitches thrown to him. It just takes one mistake, for him to, or one that's even close in the strike zone, and he can do damage and take you the other way. And I think Acuna, I don't want to heap too much on the kid. He's 20 years old. But I think Acuna, if he comes in and he is let's just say last year when they bumped him up to AA and up to AAA, it didn't take him long at all to excel at the next level. In fact, hit better than he did at the previous level. If he comes up and does what I know a lot of the Braves think he can do, and he could be a guy hitting fourth behind Freddie before long. Not right away, but it might not take long. Or maybe, as much as they love to have Freddie hitting third and you want him up in the first inning and getting more at-bats, over the course of the season, I don't know how many more bats you get hitting hitting third rather than fourth, but you could always think about moving Freddie to fourth and have Acuna hit third, Or,
I think they're pretty committed to having him at the 3 spot.
Snit loves him hitting 3.
They want to get those extra.
And they are still looking for another bat. We've been saying that for a while, but they are still looking, and there are still a few guys left. Not many, but there are still a few left, and they could always make a move during the season. So if it comes to that, but they hope to. I think ideally they'd like to avoid having to overspend or to use any of that prospect capital to do it this year.
This is Facebook Live, the AJC's Dave O'Brien and Steve Hummer. I think we've got time for like a couple more questions.
Steve Hummer?
Yeah, I'm the old one, the old gray one. Dave's the great-looking one.
He makes me look young because that's good. I want to keep doing these. I don't want to do it with Gabe. I'm doing these with Gabe during the season, and Gabe's going to make me look as old as you look right now with me.
I'm Dave's grandfather, Steve. I don't know if there are. Coming in the spring, is there one battle that you're most interested in?
Somebody said Moustakas. I don't know if that's what the question is, but no, that's not happening.
No, that's not going to happen.
Off-season next year, though, Machado's name's thrown out around a lot by hopeful Braves fans, and Donaldson. If Austin Riley were to not come along the way they hoped, those are legitimate targets. The Braves could legitimately have the money to pursue one of those. With Machado, though, he's moving to shortstop this year, and he's going to be a free agent and be able to go to whatever team he wants and play the position that team the desirable spot for him. So, if he likes playing short this year, then he's going to want to sign with a team that'll play him at short. Yeah. So, and who knows? The Braves, like we said, Dansby needs to do it this year. So, but anyway, They will go out and get a big bat next offseason if they need to do that. If they don't think that Austin Riley and Acuna provide enough there, but they're going to have the money to do it next year. But it's not happening right now. Not a big bat, the way that people think that we're hoping they'd get.
Who's your pick to be starters 4 and 5?
Gohara,
four maybe more.
I think Gohara's a slam dunk for one of the spots, and I don't necessarily know if it's 4. I mean, they could have McCarthy in the 4 spot and move Gohara up to 2.
You got that. You got.
I don't know that they'll do that, but you could. I mean, if you just went on. I mean, you could have.
I couldn't tell if he reported in shape or not, to be honest.
I think he lost a little bit of weight. He's a big guy, and the weight's going to be an issue. He needs to not get any fatter because he's a big dude. I mean, but his mechanics are so nice that the weight, he can carry the weight like Sabathia did. He can carry the heavy weight if his mechanics are like they are, and they're perfect. So that's not an issue. And he's athletic. He can get off the mound and field his position. So. He needs to stay on top of it because he's really young to be, a heavy guy like that. But I'm that high on him. Fried, I'm really high on Fried, higher than some are. I think most people that have seen him at his best, like that day in Chicago, will realize this can be a top of the rotation type guy. I think Gohara and Fried will get those spots. If all things are equal this spring and they go on the spring results rather than, because I think Nuke needs to still cut down on the walks. They're a big issue, and he really needs to make strides in that area this spring to show that he's a little better. If Fried has a good spring, I think he would deserve it. And you could have, maybe you try Newcomb in the bullpen to start the season as going in there and just airing it out. And if he's if his control's there,
yeah.
And he bring him in an inning, controls there, then he can blow through an inning. If it's not there, as a reliever, you can get him out after a batter and go, he doesn't have it today, he's walking a guy. So maybe that's something they consider. I like him. Fried could also relieve, but you need a long guy, and it could be Fried, but it also could be Kazmir if he's healthy. I mean, there's a lot of ways that could go. They got a guy like Chase Whitley from right there in Ranburne, Alabama, and he could be, a long guy and even be given an option to start. They are knee deep in starters with options.
It's gonna be fun to watch this spring. See how these kids do.
It's going to be exciting to see how that pitching staff comes together. But
how about that for the final the final blow? What is your
finishing order in the East?
Yeah.
All right. I'll take Nationals again.
Oh, way to go! Way to go out on a limb. Okay.
Hey, I ain't a Nats fan, but they've still got a team together this year that should win, and if they don't, then they've failed miserably.
It gets a little fuzzy after that.
But you know what, though? I'll go Braves second.
Wow.
I think they can do it ahead of the Mets, because I think the Mets are a mess as far as injuries, and their offseason moves, to me, didn't make a whole lot of sense. So, and they're the Mets, so no. I think the Braves and the Mets will compete for second. Now, I don't think
that's outlandish at all.
I'm going to take the Braves second, the Mets third. Yeah. Phillies right there, Marlins at the bottom. The only sure things, I think, in that are the Nationals at the top and the Marlins at the bottom.
Yeah.
The teams in the middle could all be in any of those spots. But I think the Braves, if things go, if they get a few breaks and stay healthy, I think can finish second and not so far out of it either.
Is you foresee them actually being in the conversation for a wild card spot?
It's so. I mean, that's so difficult to predict. But yeah, they could be if the starters are healthy.
Wow.
If
I may have to rearrange my expectations a little bit.
Dansby bounces back, if Acuna comes in and does what they think he can do, if the catchers have anything close to last year's production, there's a lot of ifs. I understand that, but I'm not saying.
Everybody.
But I'm not saying they need to have career years. But if those things happen and the guys stay healthy, then yeah, they could be in the wild card race. Now if Freddie gets hurt again, no.
Yeah.
Okay, and then last year they got by.
They have no margin of error.
They traded for Matt Adams and they got by for a while without Freddie, but you're not going to expect to do that again, to have a guy that can plug in there. Freddie's the one guy they cannot afford to lose, period. But I think people shouldn't underestimate the difference that having Ozzie Albies for a full year at second base, as well as Brandon Phillips played last year, and he did play really well. Ozzie Albies is a dynamic guy at second base who has more power than Brandon did at this point of his career. Is a better defender, even though Brandon was really good. Ozzie's got better range, and he and Dansby, I think, are going to help each other. That keystone combination there, second and third, and Ozzie doesn't have to look over his shoulder and like Brandon did for how long he's going to be out there. And third base, another big if Camargo, showed before he got hurt when he was playing short. Who knows? He probably would have stayed at short for the rest of the year or shared it with Dansby down the stretch. But before he got hurt, he was playing really well. So, and then he goes down to Dominican this winter and had a great Winter League season. Hit game-winning home runs in back-to-back games in the finals, Dominican finals. His power is ever increasing, and he's gone from being a slap hitter to being a guy with legit power. So, who knows? Third base, he's really excited and eager to get a chance there, and I think they're going to give it to him. But so he could be big over third. The defense should be so much better in the infield that if we went back and you looked at the films of those first 20 games last year, there were 4 or 5 games that they either lost because of the defense or there were winnable games that they didn't win because of a misplay here and there. I mean, the defense was really horrible early last year, and I think the defense right out of the gates this year should be a lot better. They've really focused. That's another thing we haven't talked about, but we're running out of time here. But the stress they've put on fundamentals this spring, I've never seen the fundamental stress so much as this team's doing this spring, and that's clearly a reflection on how poorly they played last year at the start of the year. I think when Snit got the job, I think it was under it was agreed upon that, hey, we are going to stress defense a lot more at spring training, the fundamentals, and we're not going to be sloppy like we were early last year, because they were sloppy. And so far they've been, I mean, day one they're out there doing bunt defense.
They're actually working.
They're working. They're doing practices. It's not just
more work than
going
golf
through the
out here.
motions. And the workouts have been like 2 hours longer between the work they're doing before the workout and staying until 2 in the afternoon. They've been a lot longer than in the past because the game starts so soon, and they are determined to get that work in that they had already decided they were going to do. Whether they have to do it in 4 days or the normal would have been 7 or 8 days before the first games, but. There are good signs as far as the defense is concerned, and them being a better fundamental team early on.
I say we pull the plug. What do you say?
As much as I like to sit here and talk all day.
You've got stories to write.
I do.
I just have the rest of the afternoon to put my feet up. This has been Facebook Live with the AJC's Dave O'Brien and Steve Hummer, known as Abbott and Costello, and let's do it again sometime.
Peace.